My brother got my wife pregnant. I found out because of a pregnancy test under the bathroom sink, tire tracks in my gravel driveway, and a security camera my wife did not know I had installed. I did not scream when I saw the footage. I did not call my brother. I did not ask my wife for one more lie dressed up as an explanation. I spent 11 days building the cleanest demolition of my life. Security footage. Phone records. Company card statements. Hotel receipts. Divorce papers. Every beam placed exactly where it needed to be. Then I waited until my father's 65th birthday dinner, when the whole family was sitting around one table. Before they cut the cake, I turned on the dining room TV. And I let the footage speak. My name is Rhett Calverton. I was 36 when this happened. I owned a construction company called Calverton Build and Structural. I started it when I was 27 with a second-hand truck, a contractor's license, and the kind of work ethic people like to praise until it starts making them feel lazy. No inheritance. No investors. No father-in-law writing checks. No rich uncle. Just me, a truck that needed a prayer before every ignition, and enough stubbornness to outlast most people's excuses. 9 years later, Calverton Build and Structural had 31 employees. We handled commercial and residential contracts across 3 counties. New builds, remodels, structural repairs, foundation work, lake properties, small business expansions. We were not the biggest company in the region. But our name meant something. We did not cut corners. We did not disappear halfway through a job. We did not miss deadlines unless weather or God himself got involved. If something went wrong on one of my sites, I found out why before I went to sleep that night. That is not a personality trait I chose. It is just the only way I know how to operate. I am telling you that because everything in my life was built the same way. The company. The house. The marriage. All of it came from my time, my hands, my discipline, and my refusal to let weak materials hold weight they were never meant to carry. For a long time, I believed that meant something to the people closest to me. That was my mistake. My wife's name was Lyra. She came into my life 11 years ago at a mutual friend's housewarming party. She worked as a textile buyer for a regional home goods chain, which sounded boring until you heard her talk about fabric, materials, stitching, manufacturing quality, dye lots, supplier ethics, and why most expensive things were expensive for stupid reasons. She had a sharp eye. That was what first caught me. Not just beauty, although she had that too. It was precision. She could touch the edge of a throw blanket and tell you whether it would pill after 3 washes. She could glance at a chair and know whether the upholstery was worth the price tag. She had strong opinions about materials and craftsmanship, and I respected strong opinions when they were backed by knowledge. We dated for 3 years before I proposed. We were married 5 years before everything collapsed. 2 years into the marriage, I bought the house in Caldwell Crest as an anniversary surprise. Lakefront property. 4 bedrooms. Wraparound deck, private dock. Old stone fireplace, kitchen facing the water. Long gravel driveway lined with pine and oak. It needed work, but good work. The kind of work that makes a house more yours every time you touch it. I paid cash, not to show off. Because debt and I have never had a friendly relationship. I remember driving Lyra there with her eyes closed. She laughed the whole way, telling me if I had bought a puppy without telling her, she was going to be mad but only for about 10 minutes. When we pulled into the driveway, I told her to open her eyes. The look on her face stayed with me for years. I thought that look meant she understood what I had built for us. I thought it meant home. Then there was Zev. Zev was my younger brother by 5 years. I want to be fair about who he was, because this story does not work unless you understand that I did not keep him around because I was blind. I kept him around because he was family. And for a long time, I thought that word meant the same thing to both of us. Zev was charming in the way some people are charming when nobody ever forces them to become useful. Good smile. Quick jokes. Easy apologies. The kind of man people wanted to believe in because believing in him was easier than admitting he was exactly what his choices kept proving. He failed an apprenticeship at 23. Tried a landscaping side business that collapsed inside 1 season because he could not manage a schedule to save his life. Got a DUI at 28, and I helped with the attorney, the fines, the transportation, the insurance nightmare, all of it. Our parents, Harlan and Dolores, were both retired by then. They did not have the money to absorb one of Zev's disasters. So I did. Every time Zev landed somewhere bad, I reached in and pulled him out. Every time, he thanked me like he meant it. And every time, within a few weeks, the gratitude faded, and he drifted right back to the same pattern. The last lifeline I gave him was a job at Calverton. Site coordinator. Real salary. Flexible hours. Light enough responsibility that even Zev's lifelong feud with effort should not have been able to sink it. He was not managing crews. He was not estimating contracts. He was not negotiating with clients. He was making sure material deliveries matched job schedules, coordinating small supplier runs, keeping basic site paperwork organized, and showing up when and where he was told. I also gave him a company card. Standard operational tool. Materials. Equipment. Contractor supply runs. Emergency purchases if a crew needed something fast. I trusted him with it because at some point you either treat a man like he can grow up or you admit you no longer believe he ever will. I chose wrong. My work schedule ran heavy during active contract phases. 4 days out of town, sometimes a full week. Lyra and I had settled into something I called stability at the time, and I meant it sincerely. She managed the house. I managed the company. We had dinner when I was home. We took 2 trips a year. We had routines. It was not the first year of the relationship anymore, where everything felt electric just because the other person walked into a room. But I did not need electric. I needed solid. Sustainable. Something built well enough to carry weight. I thought that was what I had. The pregnancy test was under the bathroom sink behind a box of cotton rounds. Not buried. Not hidden well. Just sitting there like someone had set it down in a hurry and never gone back. 2 lines. I picked it up and stood there in our bathroom for a long moment, listening to the air move through the vent. Then I brought it downstairs and placed it on the kitchen counter in front of Lyra. I did not say anything. She looked at the test. Then she looked at me. After 8 years together. After Caldwell Crest. After everything I had built. What she said was, "It's complicated." That was the first thing. Not, "I'm pregnant." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I was scared." Not even a lie. It's complicated. People use that phrase when the truth is simple but ugly. I did not raise my voice. I did not ask whose it was. I did not ask how long. I did not ask why. I told her I needed some air. Then I walked out to my truck and sat there in the dark. A week earlier, I had come home one night ahead of schedule and noticed tire tracks in the gravel near the garage that I could not account for. I filed it away without saying anything. That is what I do. I collect information before I move. At the time, I told myself maybe it was a delivery truck. Maybe a contractor. Maybe a friend of Lyra's I forgot she mentioned. Then there was the second wine glass in the drying rack on a night Lyra said she had been home alone. Then the faint trace of something near the couch. Not cologne exactly. More like a man's deodorant. A scent I registered once and quietly set aside because I was not ready to know what it meant. Now there was a pregnancy test with 2 lines and a wife calling it complicated. So I sat in my truck, not spiraling, not trying to talk myself out of what I already knew. I let the facts arrange themselves honestly. Most people avoid doing that because the arrangement is usually uncomfortable. Tire tracks. Second wine glass. Unfamiliar scent. Lyra's recent distance. My work travel. Pregnancy test. It's complicated. When I went back inside, Lyra was already in bed with the light off. I lay next to her and stared at the ceiling. Then I made a decision. 3 weeks before finding that test, I had ordered a 4-camera security system. 2 exterior units. 1 covering the front drive. 1 covering the back deck entrance. 1 interior camera in the living room, positioned wide. General security coverage. Nothing hidden in bedrooms. Nothing illegal. Just the kind of setup that makes sense for a lakefront property with long stretches of nobody home. I installed everything myself on a Tuesday I cleared from my calendar. Lyra thought I had a supply meeting across town. I want to be clear about why I installed them. It was not jealousy. It was the wine glass. It was the tire tracks. It was the specific low-frequency unease of a man whose gut had stopped being quiet. On a job site, ignoring an early warning sign is how a minor problem becomes a catastrophic problem later. I had learned to listen. 2 days after finding the test, I left for a 4-day job. I watched the feeds from my motel room each night. On night 2, the gray sedan showed up. I recognized it before my mind fully processed what I was seeing. Zev's car. The one I had co-signed for, because of course I had. It rolled into the back driveway at 9:17 p.m. with its headlights already off. That detail mattered. People who are visiting innocently do not usually turn their lights off before pulling in. The car stayed until 12:43 a.m. That was Tuesday. Thursday, it came back. 8:55 p.m. to 1:20 a.m. I went back through 6 weeks of stored footage that same night. The pattern was there every time I was out of town. Not every night. But consistent, reliable, comfortable. That was the word that kept surfacing in my head. Comfortable. Whoever was making these visits was not nervous. Not hesitant. Not conflicted. He knew where to park. He knew which entrance to use. He knew when I was gone. The interior living room camera answered the question I had not fully let myself ask yet. I am not going to describe what that footage showed in detail. I will just say that what Lyra and Zev believed was private was not. And watching your wife and brother betray you on a 4-inch phone screen in a motel room 3 hours from home is a very specific kind of pain. I would not wish it on anyone. I did not throw the phone. I did not break anything. I did not call Lyra. I did not call Zev. I sat on the edge of the motel bed and let the reality finish assembling itself piece by piece until there were no pieces left and the picture was complete. Then I opened a new tab and pulled up Zev's company card statements. That was when betrayal became something harder. Restaurants. 2 tabs at places 40 minutes outside town. Hotel bookings at a property in the same radius. A spa package charged on a Thursday afternoon. All on the Calverton company card. A card I had given Zev because I trusted him to use it for site-related purchases. My brother had been taking my wife out on my money. Using the company I built to finance the betrayal inside the marriage I thought I had built. There is a special kind of audacity in that. Architectural audacity. The kind that makes you stop feeling hurt and start seeing the full structural failure. I pulled phone records next. Lyra was still on my carrier plan. One more thing I paid for because it was easier to handle everything under one account. Before 9 months earlier, her contact with Zev looked normal. Light. Occasional. A wife and brother-in-law texting about family dinners, birthdays, logistical things. Then the frequency spiked. Daily. Sometimes hourly. Late at night. Long calls when I was away. Gaps that matched his visits. The pregnancy test no longer had a mystery around it. It had a timeline. It had footage. It had receipts. It had my brother's name all over it. I checked the calendar on my phone. My father Harlan's 65th birthday dinner was in 11 days. My parents' house. Whole family. One table. I stared at that date for a long time. Something that was not quite a plan but was the beginning of one started taking shape. There is a concept in construction called load path. It is the route structural force travels through a building, from the point where weight is applied down through every beam, column, joint, and support until it reaches the foundation. A building holds or fails based on whether that path is clean and uninterrupted. You can have the best materials in the world, the best crew, the best design. But if the load path is compromised, the structure comes down eventually. It always does. When I decided what I was going to do with that birthday dinner, I thought about it the same way. 11 days to build something that would not collapse under pressure. 11 days to make sure every joint was supported, every weak point reinforced, every element placed correctly before I applied the load. I started the next morning. Security footage first. I edited it into a clean timestamp sequence. Not manipulated. Not sensationalized. Organized. Date. Time. Duration of visit. Camera angle. What the camera captured. I was not trying to be cruel. I was trying to be irrefutable. There is a difference. Cruel leaves room for argument. Irrefutable does not. I exported the final file to my phone. Then my laptop. Then a cloud drive created specifically for this purpose. I tested playback twice on different screens to make sure nothing buffered, skipped, or failed. Text records next. Exported through the carrier account. Screenshots backed up. Phone contact timeline printed. Hotel booking confirmation next. Lyra had forwarded one to our joint household admin email by accident. A small careless mistake she probably forgot about entirely. I printed it. Then company card statements. 6 months. Relevant charges highlighted in yellow. 1 printed page per item. Restaurant. Hotel. Spa. Dates. Amounts. Merchant locations. Clean. Readably. The kind of documentation you could hand to a stranger and have them understand in under 2 minutes. On day 4, I met with a divorce attorney named Ren Caulfield. A contractor friend gave me the referral and described her as precise and unsentimental. He was right. She listened to the entire situation without interrupting once. Not when I described the pregnancy test. Not when I explained Zev. Not when I showed her the card statements. At the end, she asked 3 questions. Do you have a prenuptial agreement? Yes. Does it protect the business? Yes. Was the house purchased with premarital or separate assets? Primarily premarital assets. Documented. Paid cash. She leaned back slightly. Good. Then you are not here to panic. You are here to execute. I almost smiled. That was exactly right. The prenup protected Calverton completely. Lyra had signed it without objection back when I was apparently someone she respected. The house would be a negotiation, but Ren confirmed that with the filing structure and documented premarital assets, Lyra's claim would be limited. Divorce papers were ready in 2 days. I kept them folded in my jacket and did not touch them again until I needed them. Then came the hardest part. Not the discovery. I could survive discovery. What was harder was sitting across from Lyra at breakfast and asking how her week was going. What was harder was texting Zev about a site scheduling issue on Wednesday and getting a completely normal response from a man who believed himself untouchable. What was harder was occupying a version of myself that no longer existed for people who did not deserve even that much of me. I did it anyway. Because I understood what would happen if I moved too soon. If I confronted Lyra privately the night I found the test, she would have had an attorney by morning. Zev would have run straight to Dolores with whatever version of the story made him look least disgusting. By dinner Sunday, I would have been the angry husband who could not handle a complicated situation. The narrative would have been managed. Contained. Softened at the edges. Private pain is easy to spin. Public evidence is not. There is no spinning a TV screen in your parents' dining room with the whole family sitting in front of it. I gave Zev a routine site assignment the Monday of that week. Kept communication professional. Same as always. I did not want him suspicious. I needed him relaxed. Present, completely convinced he was safe. Operationally, I made one quiet adjustment at Calverton. I shifted the most critical account structures to ensure sole signatory continuity, documented cleanly and disclosed correctly. Not hiding anything, not doing anything shady. Just making sure the business I built from nothing could not become a negotiating chip. Ren confirmed the approach was sound. By Friday night, everything was ready. Every file. Every printout. Every clip. The divorce papers were in my jacket pocket. The phone was loaded and tested. I had done everything I could do. Lyra came and sat beside me on the couch while I was reviewing documents on my laptop, angled so she could not see the screen. She watched me for a moment. She had been watching me that whole week, searching for something she could not quite find. "Is everything okay?" she asked. I closed the laptop. I looked at her. "Tomorrow is going to be a good night," I said. "I've been looking forward to it." She held my gaze a little too long. Whatever she was looking for in my face, she did not find it. Because I had decided what my face would show. And it showed exactly nothing that would help her. She went to bed. I stayed up until 2 in the morning running one final review. Every clip in sequence. Every document in order. Every detail confirmed. Then I closed the laptop, set my alarm, and slept better than I had in weeks. Because tomorrow I was going to my father's birthday dinner, and I was bringing everything. My parents' house is a single-story place on a quiet street they have owned for 30 years. The kind of neighborhood where people still wave from driveways without it feeling like performance. Harlan and Dolores have kept it almost exactly the same. Same sofa. Same dining table. Same framed photos on the hallway wall. Same smell of whatever Dolores started cooking 3 hours before anyone arrived. The dining room has a 65-inch flat screen mounted on the wall adjacent to the table. I helped Harlan install it 2 Christmases ago. We used a stud finder, a level, and took our time getting it right because he wanted it straight, and I do not do things any other way. I remembered that afternoon clearly. I did not know then what I would use it for. I arrived early. Harlan was on the back porch when I pulled up, and we carried 2 extra chairs in from the garage without much conversation, which is how Harlan prefers things. He is a retired civil surveyor. Spent his career measuring land, marking boundaries, calling things exactly what they were. He is not a man who fills silence just to make noise. I have always respected that about him. We set up the chairs, and he told me about a road project 2 miles from the house that he had opinions about. I listened. It was completely normal. I brought him a bottle of good bourbon. We toasted him at the door. He looked genuinely happy. That was the only part of that evening that complicated me. Harlan is a good man. He did not deserve to have his 65th birthday become what it became. But the truth was always going to surface. I had only decided it would surface on my terms, in a room where no one could reframe it afterward. The guest list was exactly what I needed. Harlan and Dolores. Me and Lyra. Zev, who showed up alone like always. My Aunt Petra and her husband Gordy, my cousin Willa and her partner Saul. 10 people total. The immediate family in one room with nowhere to redirect. Before everyone sat down, I excused myself to use the bathroom at the end of the hall. On the way back, I stopped in the dining room doorway and paired my phone to the TV. The connection saved cleanly on the first attempt. I confirmed the video file was queued and the volume was set. Then I went back to the table, sat down in the seat I had mentally selected 2 days earlier, and poured bourbon for Harlan. Dinner was exactly what it always was. Dolores made roasted chicken with 3 sides and fresh bread, the same spread she had produced for every significant family occasion for as long as I could remember. People talked. Local news. Harlan's upcoming fishing trip. A remodel Gordy was having done on their place. Normal conversation at a normal table. I participated when it made sense. I ate. Zev sat across from me and slightly to my left. We made eye contact twice during the meal. He looked away both times. Not dramatically. Just the small involuntary look away of a man carrying something heavy in a room with the person he took it from. I noted it. Said nothing. Lyra sat beside me. At one point, she touched my arm lightly, the way she used to when she wanted to signal warmth across a table full of people. I let her. I did not pull away. I just let it sit there and mean nothing. Dolores brought out the cake. Layered chocolate, white frosting. 65 piped across the top in careful script. She set it in the center of the table and lit the candles. Everyone sang, and Harlan looked around at his family with the specific satisfaction of a man who believed the people he loved were intact. He blew out every candle in one breath. The table applauded. Dolores picked up the knife. I picked up my phone. Bluetooth connected in under 2 seconds. I set the phone face down beside my plate. Before Dolores cut the cake, I said, conversational, unhurried. in the same tone I would use to mention anything at this table. I want to share something. Dad loves a good reveal. This one has been a long time coming. Dolores laughed, still holding the knife. What is this, Rhett? The television came on. First frame. Exterior camera feed. Timestamp reading 9:17 p.m. 6 weeks earlier. A gray sedan rolling into the back driveway with its headlights already off. License plate clearly visible. Date clearly visible. The car belonging to the man sitting 4 feet to my left. Petra said, Zev, just his name. The way you say something when the question and answer arrive at the same time. I watched Zev's face go from relaxed to a specific shade of pale that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. Nobody spoke for the first few seconds. That is the thing about showing people something they cannot immediately categorize. There is always a gap between seeing and understanding. The room was in that gap. People leaning forward slightly, trying to make sense of a timestamped driveway feed on a birthday dinner television, working out why it was there and what it meant and why I was sitting back in my chair like I had been waiting for that moment all week. Because I had been. The footage ran in sequence exactly the way I edited it. Chronological. Clean. No gaps. Exterior camera first. The sedan arriving. Lights off. Same driveway. Different dates. Then the deck entrance feed. Same car. Same pattern. Then the interior living room footage. Position last deliberately, because that was where you put the evidence that removed all remaining doubt. I picked up my bourbon and took a slow sip. I did not watch the screen. I had seen it enough times. I watched the room. Willa had both hands flat on the table. Gordy had stopped moving entirely. Harlan was sitting very straight in his chair with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not anger exactly. Something quieter and more permanent than anger. Saul stared at a fixed point between the screen and the centerpiece, the particular stare of a person who desperately wants to be somewhere else. Dolores stood up. Turn it off. Rhett. Her voice had that sharp frequency it got when she was trying to hold something together through sheer force of tone. Turn it off right now. Not because she did not understand what she was seeing, because she did. And understanding it in front of everyone at once was more than she could process standing up. I set my glass down. I looked at her calmly. I did not turn it off. She said it again. Sharper. I held her gaze without moving and let the footage keep running behind me. After a moment, she sat back down. Because there was nothing else to do. Lyra had gone completely still. She was not looking at the screen. She was looking at the tablecloth with the focused intensity of someone trying to find a way out through the fabric. Her hands were in her lap. She had not moved since the television came on. Zev stood up. Let me just. Harlan looked at him. That was all. Just looked at him. The look of a man who had spent a career measuring things precisely and calling them what they were, now applying that same precision to his youngest son. Zev stopped mid-sentence like something had physically caught him. Then he sat back down. I reached into my jacket pocket and produced the printed evidence. 1 page per seat. Organized the way I organize everything. Company card charges highlighted. Hotel booking dates circled. The timeline of phone contact mapped across 9 months at the bottom. I slid them down the table in one motion, the way you distribute materials at the start of a meeting. That was when the room fully understood what it was sitting inside. Not an ambush. Not a breakdown. A presentation. A man who had known. A man who had prepared across 11 deliberate days. A man who had chosen this room, this night, these witnesses, with complete intention. I watched it register on every face. The preparation was the message. The preparation said, I am not reacting. I have been in control this entire time. Petra looked at the page in front of her. Then she looked at me. I saw something move through her expression that I did not have a name for in the moment, but later understood as a specific kind of respect. Zev looked at the page in front of Harlan. The spa charge was near the bottom. Itemized. Dated 2 days after last year's birthday dinner. Something shifted in him. Then I watched it happen in real time. The calculation that takes place in a man when humiliation reaches a level his ego cannot absorb quietly. He shoved back from his chair. The legs screamed against the floor. Then he was moving toward me with the kind of forward momentum that only resolves one way. I was on my feet before he covered half the distance. One punch. Clean. Direct. Defensive. And exactly as deliberate as everything else I had done that night. I did not keep hitting him. I did not stand over him. I did not make a speech while he was down. He came at me. I put him down. Zev hit the floor hard. The birthday cake caught him on the way. Dolores had not cut it yet, and the platter hit the floor and shattered, chocolate frosting spreading wide across the tile. The number 65 in white icing landed face down on the dining room floor. Zev stayed down. The room went completely silent, except for Dolores making a sound I had never heard from her before. I looked at Zev for 1 second. Then I reached into my jacket and took out the divorce papers I had been carrying since I left the house. I placed them on the table in front of Lyra. Flat. Neat. No ceremony. She stared at them like paper could burn. Then I looked around the room. Every face. I took my time. My mother was crying quietly, both hands pressed to her mouth. My father was looking at Zev on the floor with that same unreadable expression. Something in it looked like it had been building for longer than tonight. Lyra stared at the papers and nowhere else. I said it quietly. No performance. No shouting. Anyone who stands behind what they did, anyone who defends them, calls them, takes their side after tonight, is dead to me. That is not a threat. That is just the way it is. Nobody spoke. I looked at every single person at that table and let the silence confirm it. Okay, I said. Then we are done. I walked out of the dining room. Through the front door. Into my truck. The neighborhood was quiet. The house behind me still had every light on. I could see the dining room window from the driveway, shapes moving behind it, people standing, the chaos of a room that had just been rearranged permanently. My phone started going off before I reached the end of the street. Notifications stacked on the screen, sitting face up on the passenger seat. 12 in the first 4 minutes. I did not touch it once. I drove. And the only thing I thought about was not the dinner, not the footage, not Zev on the floor, not Lyra staring at divorce papers. Not my mother's face. I thought about 6 in the morning. Because that night was the exposure. What came with morning was the part that would actually last. I woke up at 5:55 a.m. on Corbett's couch. Corbett is my site manager. 6 years at Calverton. Reliable in the way certain men are reliable, not because they are trying to impress anyone, but because it is simply their baseline. When I showed up at his door the night before and told him I needed a place to land, he opened the door wider, went to the linen closet, and came back with a pillow and folded blanket. He did not ask a single question. Just turned off the kitchen light and went back to bed. That is the kind of person worth keeping close. I was on the phone with Wren Caulfield by 6:15. The locksmith was dispatched to Caldwell Crest by 6:30. By 7:00, Wren confirmed the divorce filing would be formally submitted when her office opened. By 7:30, the locksmith had finished. New deadbolts. New garage code. New security system pin. Clean sweep. I drove to the house. Lyra's car was in the driveway. She had come back the night before, which told me something about where she thought things stood. That there was still a version of this where she had a place inside that house. I parked behind her and waited. At 8:10, she appeared at the front door, looked at me through the glass for a moment, and opened it. I told her she had until the end of the day to collect personal items. Clothing, toiletries, personal documents. Not furniture. Not anything purchased jointly during the marriage. My attorney had the full inventory. Anything not on the approved list stayed. She did not argue. Not one word. She looked at me the way you look at something when you finally understand its actual dimensions. Not the comfortable version you built in your head. The real one underneath. She looked like a woman who had miscalculated the weight of what she was standing in front of. She asked about the baby once, quietly. The only thing she asked. I said, that conversation happens through attorneys. She nodded, went inside. 90 minutes later, she came out with 2 bags and a cardboard box, loaded them into her car without looking back at the house, drove down the road, around the bend, and out of sight. I watched until she was gone. Then I went inside and made coffee. Zev's termination was handled at 9:00 a.m. I called Odette. She had been with Calverton since year 2 and ran the office with the kind of quiet efficiency that makes everything around her look easy. I told her to process the separation paperwork effective immediately. Formal letter. Conduct incompatible with continued employment. Misuse of company card documented separately. Clean severance as the contract required, because I run things correctly even when the person being let go deserves nothing from me. HR copied on everything. Company card cancelled. Access removed. Email disabled. Building access revoked. Zev texted 4 times that morning. I read the first one. Did not respond. Blocked the number before noon. The family sorted itself out across the following week, mostly along the lines I expected. Dolores called 3 times. Not to defend what Zev did directly. She is not capable of that level of dishonesty, even in crisis. But she asked me to find a way to hold things together. To consider what this would do to the family as a unit. I told her the same thing each time. I love you. I love Dad. My door is always open to both of you. But Zev is finished. Anyone who chooses his side gets the same distance I applied to Lyra. She cried each time. I let her. I did not cut the calls short. She is my mother, and that is a different category than everything else in this story. Harlan called once, 3 sentences. I saw what I saw. I'm sorry, it was my house. You did what you had to do. 4-minute call. I thanked him. I meant it completely. That was the whole thing. Petra sent a message 2 days later. She said she had watched me build Calverton from nothing, and had always believed the family underestimated what kind of man I actually was. She said the dinner proved it. Not the punch specifically, she wrote. The 11 days before it. The preparation. The discipline. The decision to do it in a room where no one could reframe the truth afterward. I read that one twice. Saved it. The divorce moved efficiently because Lyra had no real leverage to slow it down. The prenup protected Calverton entirely. The house became the central negotiation, but with Wren's filing and 9 months of documented evidence working against her, Lyra's position was weak from the start. She retained some marital asset claims and walked away with significantly less than she would have if she had been a different kind of person. The pregnancy was confirmed as Zev's. That removed any remaining ambiguity and sealed the legal outcome in a direction that required no further argument. 6 weeks after the dinner, I was sitting on the dock at Caldwell Crest on a Saturday morning. Coffee, water, quiet, the kind of morning with no agenda built into it. That used to feel like something I had to earn. Now it simply felt like mine. I want to be honest about what I felt sitting there, because stories like this usually end with someone saying they felt free. Light. Victorious. Like justice had cleaned everything. Some of that was true. But what I felt more than anything was accurate. Like the world around me had finally been adjusted to reflect what was real instead of the version everyone else needed me to maintain for their own comfort. I had tried loyalty. I had extended it past every reasonable limit to a wife who used it as cover and a brother who used it as a resource. I built something real with people who treated the foundation like it would hold no matter what they did to it. Like I was a structure that could absorb any load because I always had before. What they did not understand, what people like that never understand, is that a load path has limits. When a man who builds things for a living finally decides the structure is compromised beyond repair, he does not patch it. He clears the site. That is what I did. Sitting on that dock with my coffee going cold and the water moving the way water moves when nothing is wrong with it, I was not looking back at any of it. Not the dinner. Not the footage. Not the punch. Not the papers. Not the drive home in the dark. I was thinking about the next contract. About what I was going to build next. That is the only direction I have ever known how to face. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you really like our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.